Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Talk Off Tacoma. I was talking about the components of downtown Tacoma and some of the things that are really key and important because I think it really gets downtown into a very vibrant set of circumstances. And what I mean by that is that if you draw people to downtown based on just activities and things to do, then you start to add more people who will want to live down there. And then that creates more opportunities for jobs because companies will follow and they want to make sure that they offer places to eat. And then that adds to even more companies want to add themselves to the fabric because then people would want to basically work in the same area that they're living and having entertainment. It also adds to just bringing more people in general who may live someplace else to the city. Now, Tacoma has caught, if you've actually seen some of the blogs and different things that talk about Tacoma, there's been a lot of people, folks in Seattle and other places, who have really started to take a second look at Tacoma and take their hat off to some of the smart growth that the city has done. And Topgolf is one of those that I think the city has to play right. Now, I mentioned there's certain key spots, key nodes, if you will. One, Ben McMenamin's, which is the old Elks Lodge, that finally got refurbished. It's April now, so towards the end of April, April 24th, I believe. So literally in less than 20 days, that facility will be open. That's going to be great because it actually repurposes an old building and keeps most of it, the original frame and everything intact. They redone everything, and it adds a lot of elegance to the city. And it also brings in small neighborhood concerts and things like that. It just adds a much more interesting dynamic. Plus, it's a little small hotel as well and different things. It's adding several restaurants and a tiki bar and just different things. So that part is great. Next to it, or very close to it, is Surge Tacoma. The city put out the old City Hall. That is a iconic building that you see in a lot of different postcards. And there was so many different attempts to try to get this project going, or actually to get the City Hall worked on, and it just fell apart every time that the city tried to do it. Finally, Surge Tacoma offered to convert the building into a lot of mixed use. It's going to have about 40 micro units. It's going to have a technology center inside as well as co-working space and offices. It's going to have 2 floors of retail, and it's going to have other amenities, about 2 to 3 restaurants and a bar. So those two are very strong nodes. The bookend to this would be the Tacoma Town Center, and I've done many videos talking about that. The Town Center is extremely important because it adds a mall component that the city doesn't have. We have the Tacoma Mall, but it's away from downtown. This literally adds more of a mall component to downtown, and it really does bring businesses here. If you look at a lot of the storefronts in Tacoma, they sit empty because there's really no major draw to the city. There needs to be something that will draw people to the city, and we're getting to that point, but you're not going to fill up a lot of those vacant spaces. With a mall, you have new stores, new everything. Everything's new, so you're more likely to get bigger chains to come in. I mean, we've already saw what brewery blocks have done. And I don't consider brewery blocks, even though it's a major, significant development, I don't consider that another bookend. It's a huge development. It's adding a lot of retail and office and things like that, residential. But I don't consider it part of the bookend, but it is a major, major mention because it's literally taken a whole section of dilapidated buildings and structures and really building mostly all new. But when we look at the town center, it's a massive project taking over vacant land, and it's adding that whole live and work concept as well as play. And it may even have an esports arena in it, possibly have a grocery store, which is desperately needed in downtown. Now, the other bookend, which is what this video is going to be Topgolf. Topgolf is important because there's no Topgolf in the entire state. Now, there has been news recently, a few months ago, if you look at Renton, the city of Renton, Topgolf basically submitted blueprints of what that Topgolf would look like. I don't think there's anything that's firm. We had gotten word over a year ago about them wanting to look at Tacoma. The city put an offer out there for an entertainment district, and the only takers were Topgolf. And so you're looking at about 11 acres of land right by the Tacoma Dome, and the city wanted something like what you see at Kansas City Power and Light, this vibrant entertainment district with shops and all this other stuff. We haven't heard anything. Nothing. So since that time, Topgolf had came there. They had talked to a lot of the folks, the mayor, and they showed a lot of interest. They even have a blueprint of everything. And then we just got word the other day that Kirkland is getting the first ever Topgolf lounge, where there would be 4 putting areas. So it's a very scaled down version. It's more of a lounge concept as opposed to a full blown out system where you have 3 levels. And the typical Topgolf that you see in many parts of the country. When I was in Nashville recently, when I went back home, you can see Topgolf from the interstate, and it's really impressive. And there's Topgolfs all over the country and in different parts of the world. But we hadn't heard anything about Tacoma until recently. And now I sent an email just yesterday to Topgolf and basically ask questions. Now, Topgolf is going to give you the same typical answer most companies will tell you when they're about to come. We don't have any information right now. And that's code typically for saying that we can't tell you anything right now because we're in negotiations. Now, Pat Beard, who I know is one of the economic development folks within the city, and she's one of the folks that's working very closely to the project. Now, I did not reach out to her about it because I figured she wouldn't tell me anything anyway. But she did speak with folks at the local newspaper, and she said that the company had entered into a memorandum of understanding. Now, we didn't know about this before. And that basically a lot of the tests, because there's feasibility tests, there's a lot of different analysis and all of this, most of those have come back. And they're working on one of the final pieces, which is basically the parking part of this. Now, let me kind of unpack that a little bit and what I think that means. Just looking at the area and looking at the existing roads that are there. First, I think that the big thing was, would this make financial sense for the company? And I think that they came back and said, yeah, it's going to be the only one of its kind at that time in the entire state. So you're relying on a massive population. But even if you didn't count Seattle or any of that, and you count just the South Sound has 1 million people in it. And Tacoma being the hub of those 1 million people. So it makes sense, especially in an area that's gaining a lot of attention. If you look at the Dome area, there are already many high-rises going up. Not high-rises, let me take that back. Tacoma versions of high-rises, but there are many retail buildings going up that are multi-use, right? And there are several that are on the blueprint stage and in the various different stages of planning and being approved. But we've already seen renderings of those. And when you look at it, there's going to be a tremendous amount of people just living in that area. But you're also close to a transit hub. When the Sound Transit system connects all the way from Seattle down to Tacoma eventually, you're going to have a huge population of people potentially that can get right there to where Topgolf is, along with all of the other things that are going there. So it makes sense. When you look at the road infrastructure, I think that they probably ruled that yes, it could support that. If it could support the Tacoma Dome and the traffic that comes through that area, it can support anything that Topgolf throws at it. Even if you look at concerts, because the whole point of this is to have something for people to do before and after an event at the Tacoma Dome, which we have a lot of big concerts that come through and a lot of different events. And so I think the main concept is that yes, it can handle, the roads can handle traffic, whether there is an event or not, and even just Topgolf alone, it can handle that. I think the other part of it is, can it handle two things going on at the same time? Events at the Tacoma Dome in concert with Topgolf, traffic coming and going. I think that they probably feel that it can. You got to understand there's a lot of different ways to get to the interstate. And it runs right through there. So infrastructure-wise, perfectly fine on that aspect. I think that they also look to see if a Topgolf can fit in that very unique shaped piece of land. And I think that they can pretty much configure it in the right way to make it work and customize it to fit. Because it is a triangle piece, but I think Topgolf has already checked those boxes off and it will probably fit. Now, we've never seen a blueprint like what they have completed for Renton. I'm sure there's one that's out there, but it hasn't been public from what I can tell. I mean, there may be some people that can find it. I just can't find it. So the final piece that I think that is the hang up is, what do we do about parking? Because this is mostly a parking lot that the city is saying, take, use it. But whatever you're going to present has to have parking. Now, if we look at Kansas City Power and Light, it is a mix of everything, restaurants and shops, and it's got kind of like an outdoor concert venue that's covered, and it's really cool. With that, you can incorporate a parking garage. But I think when you're looking at this piece of land, you're really working with some very small, it's big, but when you put in a huge Topgolf facility, you don't really have a whole lot of other flexible space to work with, because that facility will take up the vast majority of it. So here's what I think is going to happen, and what I think should happen. More than likely, the city and Topgolf, because an MOU, if you understand, is not necessarily a legally binding contract, but what it is saying that, hey, this is what two parties, if not more, basically say, this is what we're agreeing upon. If all of these ducks line up, then we can continue forward. But if something doesn't line up within what we are agreeing upon, then there's a chance that we can bail out of it. If one side or the other or both can't meet certain criteria within a certain timeline, then the city can move on and choose someone else. Now, they can technically do that now, but more than likely Topgolf or any other company that enters into an MOU could probably take them to court and talk about, hey, you know, we really expressed interest, we put in good faith and all of this, and the city backed out. Keep in mind, money has been exchanged as well. Topgolf put money in. So this is not something they're taking lightly. So the city wanted it that way so that they had someone who really and truly has the money to build this expensive endeavor, but also that they have some skin in the game, because the city has skin in the game. So all of those things are checking out. I think the parking solution would be a parking garage. Now, here's the thing that I think that is missing within this is retail. There's not a lot of retail right there within the Tacoma Dome area where you can walk to it and do what you need to do. But I think if you build a parking garage, you basically solve the parking problem, not only for Topgolf, but also for concerts and events that go on at Tacoma Dome, because the surface parking space thing is kind of an old concept. It's a cheap way of doing it, but it's an old concept that probably needs to be retired. You'd be better off putting a parking garage. They're much more expensive, but it makes better sense. You then can take the bottom level of that, or most of it, or parts of it, and use that as retail. That serves to handle a lot of the food, bars, and everything else. And so basically the city is still getting kind of a mini micro Kansas City Power and Light district by having all of these little shops and stores. They're just not getting the full-blown effect of what they probably wanted, and they still get the entertainment piece. Topgolf will like it because people are going to go there to those different places and back and forth, and you create a very vibrant community. So the city should do it because they solve the parking issue. They also address the entertainment aspects beyond Topgolf, where you have places to eat and bars and things like that. So therefore, people can go to a concert and go down to the parking area. Everything is pretty much within one particular location. Makes a lot of sense. I think the hang-up is who's going to pay for the parking garage and how does that work? I think more than likely, because Tacoma Dome is owned by the city, the parking, all of that's owned by the city, they probably will build the parking garage using some sort of bond method, or they may partner with Topgolf, doubt it. City will probably build it. Topgolf will basically rent so many spaces or purchase so many spaces or set up some sort of an agreement that they give to the city for so many spaces. That ensures that the city's getting revenue for this parking garage to help pay for it. But also, I think having the retail component down below, that also helps the city recoup quite a bit of money as well, because those retailers in those spaces are going to be providing money for the parking garage. They can still keep the parking garage free, but basically make it for it to be only for Topgolf stuff only, or concerts or events at the Tacoma Dome. You tell me what you think, but it seems like the project is still ongoing. It's just trying to handle all of those intricate pieces that are unique for the Tacoma Dome district. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Until next time, I will see you. Take care.